Good evening, America. I'm Rachel Maddow, and tonight we begin with breaking news that's sending shockwaves through the Kremlin. Ukrainian forces just pulled off what seemed impossible. They struck deep inside Russian territory, hitting a facility in Chechnya that Moscow swore was untouchable. And the fallout has already reached the highest levels of Russian power. Within hours of the attack, Ramzan Kadyrov, Putin's most feared enforcer, placed an emergency call to Vladimir Putin himself. Multiple sources describe it as heated and demanding. This wasn't a routine briefing. This was a crisis. Let me walk you through what happened, because the details reveal something extraordinary about where this war is heading. The target was a military facility in Chechnya, serving multiple critical functions. It trained Chechen fighters before deploying them to Ukraine. It stored ammunition for forces across the southern front. It coordinated command and control for Kadyrov's operations, but most importantly, it represented the untouchable status that Kadyrov has enjoyed throughout this conflict. There was a carefully cultivated perception that his territory exists in a protected sphere Ukraine would never dare challenge. Ukrainian strikes destroyed that perception in spectacular fashion. According to sources with access to Russian military communications, the attack achieved devastating accuracy. Precision weapons penetrated Russian defenses and triggered secondary explosions from stored ammunition, creating a cascade of destruction that spread far beyond the initial impact points. The casualties included personnel Kadyrov considers part of his personal military force, fighters whose deaths he must now explain to families in Chechnya. Their loss represents not just a tactical setback, but a personal affront to his authority. Now here's what makes this truly extraordinary. Ukrainian forces didn't just get lucky. This was surgical precision requiring detailed intelligence. They identified specific facilities, determined when they would contain maximum value targets, planned strike packages to overcome defensive systems, and executed the attack with timing that suggests intimate knowledge of Russian operations. This level of precision requires intelligence networks penetrating Russian security at the highest levels. It requires surveillance capabilities, tracking movements in what Moscow considers secure rear areas. It requires operational planning accounting for every variable, from weapon performance to the exact timing of when valuable targets would be present. Think about what this means. If Ukrainian forces can strike targets in Chechnya with this precision, then no location in Western Russia can be considered truly secure. Facilities housing command posts, ammunition depots, training centers, and logistics hubs must now account for the possibility that Ukraine knows their locations and possesses capabilities to attack them effectively. The psychological impact is staggering. Russian military personnel stationed in what they believed were safe rear areas now understand they remain potential targets. More importantly, regional leaders like Kadyrov must confront the reality that their territories face direct consequences for supporting Putin's war. Kadyrov's response was immediate and intense. Within hours, he demanded explanations for how Ukrainian forces penetrated so deep into Russian territory to strike facilities Moscow had assured him were secure. He questioned why air defense systems failed. He insisted on immediate retaliation. And most significantly, he raised concerns about whether his continued commitment of Chechen forces remains viable if Russia cannot protect his territory and personnel. This was Kadyrov leveraging his unique position as one of Putin's most loyal and valuable allies to demand responses the Russian military may not be able to provide. He's built his power on a reputation for brutal effectiveness. Ukrainian strikes that kill his fighters and destroy his facilities undermine the image of strength and invincibility that forms the foundation of his authority. Putin's response attempted to balance several competing imperatives. He needed to reassure Kadyrov that measures would prevent future strikes. He had to maintain the relationship with an ally whose forces play outsized roles in Russian military operations. He wanted to project confidence despite this Ukrainian success. And he faced the uncomfortable reality that Russian air defenses, intelligence capabilities, and strategic depth all proved inadequate. In normal circumstances, regional leaders don't place emergency calls to Putin demanding explanations for military setbacks. Kadyrov's direct confrontation suggests either he possesses unique privileges or the situation has become serious enough that normal protocols, no interpretation, reveals vulnerabilities. Ukraine has successfully exploited not just militarily, but
The facility that was struck served as a central node for organizing and deploying Chechen forces to various sectors of the Ukrainian front. Destroying it disrupted an entire system of operations. Kadyrov forces now face challenges organizing rotations, distributing supplies, coordinating operations, and maintaining logistical support that enables their combat effectiveness. Beyond military impact, the strike creates political complications. Kadyrov must explain to families how Ukrainian weapons reached into Chechnya to kill their loved ones. He must address questions from his own security services about intelligence failures. He needs to reassure commanders that similar strikes won't occur, even though he cannot provide such guarantees. And he faces uncomfortable questions about whether his loyalty to Putin serves Chechen interests if the result is Ukrainian strikes against Chechen territory. The precision of the Ukrainian strike raises disturbing questions for Russian security services about intelligence penetration. Hitting specific facilities in Chechnya with this accuracy requires detailed intelligence far beyond publicly available information. Someone provided Ukraine with precise coordinates, information about what the facility contained and when, details about defensive systems, and timing that maximized impact while minimizing interception chances. For Russian counterintelligence, this represents catastrophic failure. They didn't detect surveillance identifying the facility. They didn't prevent collection of detailed information. They didn't intercept communications between Ukrainian forces and their sources. And they didn't prevent the strike despite presumably knowing Ukraine possessed long-range capabilities. Now let's talk about what this means for Putin's coalition of power. Putin depends on maintaining support from regional leaders, military commanders, oligarchs, and security officials. Kadyrov represents a crucial element, providing military forces that are loyal, effective, and willing to conduct operations other Russian units might refuse. Ukrainian strikes threaten this balance. When Ukrainian weapons kill his fighters and destroy his facilities, Kadyrov questions whether the relationship remains beneficial. If Putin's war brings destruction to Chechnya rather than glory and resources, then Kadyrov must reconsider his support. Putin faces difficult choices responding to Kadyrov's demands. He can promise enhanced air defenses, but such systems are already stretched thin and their effectiveness remains questionable. He can authorize retaliatory strikes, but this risks escalation. He can offer additional resources, but this creates precedent for other regional leaders to make similar demands. Or he can downplay the strike's significance, risking that Kadyrov reduces his commitment or withdraws Chechen forces. None of these options are attractive. All reveal how Ukrainian strategy has evolved beyond inflicting military damage to creating political problems within Russian leadership. By striking targets that hurt Putin's key allies, Ukraine forces wedges between the president and his supporters. By demonstrating that no one in Putin's inner circle is safe from Ukrainian reach, they create anxiety and recriminations that degrade trust. By hitting targets whose political significance exceeds their military value, Ukrainian planners maximize leverage from limited strike capabilities. Beyond the political crisis, the strike creates operational challenges. Chechen forces have played disproportionate roles in the most difficult fighting in Ukraine. Russian commanders depend on Kadyrov forces for missions requiring absolute reliability. Any reduction in their effectiveness creates gaps Russian military capabilities cannot easily fill. Russian air defense planners now confront uncomfortable questions. Do they need more advanced systems? Greater numbers? Different positioning? Or do Ukrainian capabilities simply exceed what Russian air defenses can counter? While they debate, Ukrainian forces continue improving their strike capabilities and identifying additional targets. That's what makes this strike so significant. It's not just about destroyed facilities or killed personnel. It's about demonstrating to everyone in Putin's orbit that supporting this war now carries personal risk. It's about creating doubt where there was certainty. It's about forcing conversations that reveal fractures in the foundation of Russian power. The strike on Chechen facilities is a masterclass in strategic thinking. Maximum political leverage from a single military operation. A wedge driven between Putin and a crucial ally. A demonstration that Ukrainian capabilities reach farther and strike more precisely than Russian planners want to believe. And perhaps most importantly, A clear signal that Ukraine's strategy has matured beyond simple survival to sophisticated operations that target the very structure of Russian power. This is Rachel Maddow. Good night.